Hello everybody, this is Renaissance Craft. Today I'm going to be going over something that I touched on the last video, but it's about discovering your own self. So in this video I'm going to be talking about just creating, making things, and using different materials. So this is nothing that is going to be drawn or studied. I just really want to expound upon the idea of making yourself. Now there are tons and tons of different materials and things you can use, from paints to sculptures, to drawing, to mixed media, to all different types of things. And mixing and matching, trying out new things all the time can really, really help. From pencil to pen to pastels to watercolor to gouache to oil paints to acrylic to mixing oil and acrylic on the same painting, or using different washes and overdoing it with oil pastels, water-based pastels, chalk, taking a relief or a wood-cut sculpture and painting over that with thick acoustic paint or different types of paint can really make a lot of difference. You really should look into how to expand and how to really create. But on top of that is expand your style, expand how you do things. The one thing I will show is, when you're drawing, if you go larger, it can make it easier to begin with. And you see how this here, how I'm holding this, is actually one of the proper ways to, hold a pencil or use that. I've done videos on faces, so, but going larger can make it easier actually to shrink it down to go smaller. So just remember that, sometimes large isn't better, sometimes small isn't better. Find your niche, find what you do, but doing things to fit you and trying different things. So trying to do, a large drawing and then a small drawing, and see which one fits your fancy, see which one you enjoy, see what you like to do. Going through art school, that was one thing, they tried to really hone you in on just one skill. Screw one skill, do tons and tons of things. If you can draw, you should be able to sculpt. If you can sculpt, you should be able to draw. You might be better at one than the other, but you should be able to do both. And if you practice at those skills. Now, if you don't enjoy sculpting, at least try it and then figure out you don't like it. If you don't like painting, like I am not crazy about acrylics. I enjoy the look of, oil glazing, but I'm not crazy about it. I love the smell of oil paint. So, I like to have it, and I like to, have paint on occasion. I used to love to do watercolor, but it would take so much energy out of me that if I would paint for 4 to 6 hours, I would be dead for the next day or two from how much energy absorbed and concentration I absorbed. Drawing, on the other hand, or doodling with pen, I can sit there on a piece of paper, at work, or, a little scrap piece of paper, and just doodle for, a good half hour and get a neat little doodle done. I really enjoy throwing pottery and making functional pots. I love to do sculpture. Each one of those uses a different part of the brain. It's still a creative part, but I'm applying different skills or different things to that. So I'm not trying to pigeonhole myself into saying, okay, I only draw, and I'm going to do the best comic books out there. Now, Maybe I would be a lot better artist in one field if I would do that, but to me that is boring. I find it very boring. When I started out in school, I wanted to only do ultra realism. I did ultra realistic watercolors, and I wanted to learn how to do ultra realistic drawings. But there's so many cheats. That was the one thing that I didn't want, and I'm still fighting with, because if you can use cheats, in video games or in life, if you have a connection you can use to get, further your career, you're kind of stupid not to use it. Now, sometimes to start out with, if you have no experience into financial advising, and yet you have an end with somebody and they just throw you on your own, you're probably not going to be a good financial advisor. Sometimes it is good to start with the basics, start with how to do things and draw the proportions and draw without the cheats, so you understand the draftsmanship of it before you go into all the cheats and how to use those, because then you understand the fundamentals and how to do everything before you start adding in the cheats. So I am a big component of that. So for a while I was learning all this, even though I could have used the cheats to begin with, I never did. But now that I understand it, and I can do drawings and paintings and ceramics in multiple ways, I still find myself going the hard way or taking the long way, because I feel it makes me a better artist, I guess, or makes it more authentic, when really all it does is take more time and sometimes doesn't get the best results. So, learn the fundamentals, learn the basics, but always, always, always push yourself. Always push your creativity. Always push what you can and can't do, because there is never, ever a time where you can't stop learning. You can't, push yourself further. But don't just stick with one thing. Don't say, okay, I'm only going to use pencil, or I only use pen. There's a couple people. You can look at Crumb. You can look at other artists. Crumb is what comes to me, just because all he ever did was pen, and he never really got, you can see from his beginning to his later, he got better, but he never got as good as he could have been, because this is all he ever did. And there's so many artists, Pollock, he kept just trying to do the same thing over and over again, where he explored so much when he was younger, he forgot all that. And there's different ways of doing it. You can look at Van Gogh. He always pushed color. Monet always pushed color. Manet always pushed the perspective and perception of what reality was. Then you have later on artists like Picasso that pushed the boundaries of reality. And you might not like some of those artists, Salvador Dali, but each artist in his own right pushed something or did something to push himself or herself, and really created something unique. And a lot of times, there's artists that are famous just because they are in the right place at the right time, kind of what I was going back to before. And Pollock actually might be one of them, that he found a niche, and somebody built him up and made him better than what he was, and he just kept trying to trail that fame for the rest of his life. But other artists, I really don't enjoy Picasso, and he really got bad later in life, but he did push the boundaries, and he created standards that push the minimalist movement and the environmental movement and the abstract movement and all these different movements forward. That probably would have came about, but not as fast as they would. Duchamp's another one. He pushed himself as far as he could go and quit. I would never say to quit, because there's always more you can do. There's always more you can learn. But basically, always push yourself. Try new medias. Try new things. Never go with the standards. If you don't understand basic draftsmanship, don't use the cheats. Don't use the things. Don't let yourself be honed in, and pigeonholing yourself to one thing. I hope this opened your eyes a little bit, or if you want to argue with me, please go ahead and do. I would love to have a discussion about it. I'm Renaissance Craft. Thank you for your time.